Nick, I have to directly quote you from our last episode. I love quoting you. You said that the Liberals, quote unquote, had a dead cat bounce from the federal budget. When you said that, it was just very early data coming in. So what's the latest ballot tracking now?
Well, if you're a part of the red team, you're probably clutching your chest right now and will clutch your chest after you hear these numbers. In the latest Nanos tracking, we track every week. Conservatives rounding out at around 36%, up 4 points in the last 4 weeks. Liberals 30, down 2 points. New Democrats 20, down 2 points. Green Party at 6, Bloc 5, People's Party at around 3. But the key takeaway here is that the Conservatives are opening up a lead that is statistically significant. It's outside of the margin of error. Now, why? In my experience, parties without leaders actually sometimes and many times are more popular than parties with leaders. It's like there's nothing to be repulsed by. But seriously, so I think for some Canadians, they don't, there's no leader for the Conservative Party of Canada, and they think, who knows, maybe Jean Charest could be the leader. And for those Canadians that like Pierre Poilievre, they think he might be the leader, or Patrick Brown, or Leslyn Lewis. So Conservatives up 4 points in 4 weeks, no bounce. Yeah, like a complete dead cat. No offense to any cat lovers, but a complete dead cat bounce for the Liberals and the New Democrats. Maybe one of the takeaways here is that although the Liberal New Democrat arrangement, parliamentary arrangement, provides for stability, I think Canadians woke up and go, hold on a second, does that mean we're going to have this for until 2025? Perhaps some Canadians aren't happy and looking at the Conservatives as an alternative.
That's true, Nick. I mean, it's not just the federal budget. It's the agreement that we've seen between the NDP and the Liberals that have had seemingly zero impact on their support.
And you think of it this way: the Liberals. It's understandable why the Liberals would want to do this. It provides certainty because there was no threat that the budget would be defeated. But there's probably a political trade-off there, because I think for right now, for many Canadians, they probably believe it's going to be same old from the Liberals, at least between now and 2025. And for some Canadians, they're not enthusiastic about that. And now they're looking at the Conservatives as an alternative. But the reality is, if an election were held today, there's a good chance the Conservatives could win. Haven't seen numbers like this since
Aaron O'Toole.
Aaron O'Toole, the once leader of the Conservative Party, where at one point in the campaign, he was doing quite well and managed to have the advantage, but haven't seen a number like this for quite a while for the Conservatives, with the exception of the O'Toole period at one point in the last federal election campaign.
Wow. Well, welcome everyone. This is a new episode of Trendline, obviously. I'm Michael Stittle.
And I'm Nick Nanos.
And we release new episodes every 2 weeks. You can also find us on YouTube. Nick, aside from the latest ballot tracking numbers, I just want to quickly get into another protest heading to our nation's capital. This time it's motorcycles. They're rallying around a notion of freedom. I think some of the members of this protest, they've been outspoken against mask mandates, things like that. How do Canadians feel about these protests? Is this an emerging trend, or are we seeing more of these protests to be expected?
First of all, I'd like to say that I don't think many Canadians would be upset that there's a disruption in the capital of Ottawa because of a protest, because not a lot of Canadians like Ottawa, especially if you happen to be in Western Canada. So they're probably happy and don't mind seeing a protest. However, in the wake of the Freedom Convoy, that protest that did come to Ottawa, it's interesting. We did some survey research and we asked Canadians how likely or unlikely that protests like the Truckers' Freedom Convoy protest, whether they would continue as part of the regular mix of Canadian politics. About 28% said that it was likely to continue, another 48% somewhat likely. So roll those two things up and you can see 3 out of every 4 Canadians think that protests, these type of disruptive protests that are there and targeting places like Ottawa, is going to be part of the new normal in Canadian politics. So when they hear about, I know you said motorcycle, but to my mind, I thought Harleys, like we're talking Harleys coming to Ottawa.
Easy Rider, yeah.
Yeah, Easy Rider, all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be part of the new normal, and people will expect that. One thing that it is interesting is that coming out of the truckers convoy, the Freedom Convoy protest, coming out of that, an increasing number of Canadians said that freedom or freedom of speech was their top national issue of concern. It went as high as I think 8 or 9%, maybe even 10%. It's trailing down now, but there are Canadians that, from their perspective, the one top worry that they have about the country is that freedom. They believe that freedom is under siege. So get ready for what, planes, trains, automobiles, trucks, motorcycles now as potential protests for folks that are unhappy with things.
Nick, we've touched on this before in a previous episode, but freedom wasn't a word that was, you know, heavily used in political discourse in this country until, you know, recently, I suppose, with the trucker convoy, and it seemed like a direct result from vaccine mandates, things like that. I mean, is this sort of an American style politics entering our country, or where is this coming from?
Well, I think it's an American issue because it is an issue in the United States. Freedom is part of the political lexicon in the United States. You know, like, let's face it, the United States is the land of the free, while Canada is the place of peace, order, and good government. Does that sound boring or what? But you know, you know, and freedom now is part of the Canadian lexicon, not just because of the trucking convoy, but because one of the major contenders, one of the serious contenders for the Conservative Party of Canada leadership, Pierre Poilievre, has built his whole campaign about this idea of freedom. And, you know, maybe that's the one political risk. And I'll tell you one thing, Michael, in our polling, you know, over 30 years, there are a lot of things that Canadians like about the United States, but whenever politicians kind of embrace the US or sound American style a little too much, sometimes it gets under the skin of certain Canadians. So it can be both an opportunity, but it also can be a potential risk. But it's definitely going to be divisive from a political perspective in Canada.
Nick, I want to do a provincial check-in, and this time we're going to go over to New Brunswick. So hello to our New Brunswick listeners. And you have some exclusive numbers for us for Trendline.
Absolutely. You know, Nanos recently did a provincial poll in the province of New Brunswick, focusing on provincial issues. And in the latest Nanos tracking in New Brunswick, we have the Liberal Party of New Brunswick at 39%. They're up a full 5 percentage points from the provincial election, but close on their heels and statistically tied from a margin of error perspective is the sitting government, the Progressive Conservatives, who are at 37. They're down from the last election a bit. Green Party is still doing well, especially compared to the National Green Party. The Green Party in New Brunswick's at 14%. No really major change. The NDP are up compared to the last election, up 9%. And the People's Alliance, New Brunswick's response to the protest movement, is down a full 8 percentage points, down to 1.2. And then we have to put a little asterisk on this, is that just before we did our survey, the leader of the People's Party announced that he was closing shop, winding things down, and would be supporting the Conservatives, the Progressive Conservatives in New Brunswick. However, the other thing, at least that I've been hearing in New Brunswick, is that although they've closed up shop, there are rank and file members that say, hold on a second. We believe in the movement that was started. They want it to continue. So we just might see another new People's Alliance in the province of New Brunswick that would be problematic or difficult for the Progressive Conservatives, because it might swing that conservative-minded vote in New Brunswick. And there's Liberal leadership provincially going on. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in that. That's really starting to heat up, and they'll be picking a new leader and determining a new direction for the Liberal Party in New Brunswick. So statistical tie, factoring the margin of error between the provincial Liberals and the provincial Progressive Conservatives in New Brunswick.
I'm curious, Nick. You know, I'm assuming a lot of people were voting for the alliance almost as a protest vote. They were fed up with the two major parties. Have we seen those votes head elsewhere? Has the NDP, do you think, picked up any of those votes?
Well, obviously the NDP probably picked up votes at some votes at the expense of the Green Party.
Hmm.
And the other thing is the NDP is also kind of in New Brunswick is also kind of like a bit of a protest party. And if you remember, if we go into the archives, Elizabeth Weir, who was the person from St. John Harbor, I believe it was, she was the leader of the NDP and had positioned the NDP as an outsider and kind of a protest vote. But the thing is there's some really big geographic differences in the province of New Brunswick between North and South. South being primarily more Anglophone and more conservative minded, and North being having the Acadian Francophone mix and being more likely to support progressive voters, specifically the Liberals.
Nick, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Elon Musk is buying Twitter, so we'll see how that might impact political discourse in Canada.
Sounds good.
Nick, Elon Musk, famously outspoken on Twitter, has also been a huge critic of what he sees are limitations on free speech on that platform. And now he's spending billions and billions and billions of dollars to buy Twitter. So what will this mean if he kind of encourages, I guess I'll say it, unpoliced free speech? I'm not really sure how to call it.
Well, he's obviously a big believer in Twitter. He uses Twitter a lot. And he sees Twitter as the public space for dialogue. It's really too early to tell what's going to happen because it could cut either way. The big question is what would be his position on reinstating someone like Donald Trump and other individuals who've been banned by Twitter, and how we would feel about those voices being part of the mix. On the other side of the equation, there are a couple things that I tuned into that I thought were actually quite significant. He talked about weeding out and trying to eradicate bots. And bots have been the big problem on Twitter. And bots would not be human beings with accounts, but they would basically be trolls that would be set up to attack and counterattack different kind of accounts and movements and opinions in the Twitter sphere. And I would hazard to say that if Elon Musk, through technology, can figure out a way to weed out or control bots, that would really be a big game changer because we'd be back to human interaction and not bot trolls against human interactions. So, but this is really big news, not just for the United States, not just for democracy in the United States, but for democracies around the world, because Twitter has been a major player and has influenced a number of elections and has been the platform where a lot of these battles are taking place.
I mean, it's been a way for presidential candidates to speak directly to their supporters, presidents as well, and sort of bypass, media. Donald Trump is a famous example of that, and also he was famously banned from Twitter. Do you think? Do you think the public sort of wants to see more of this use of Twitter as kind of a megaphone for politicians? Is this something that Canadians appreciate?
Well, it's interesting. Back in 2016, we did a survey when Trump, we had the Trump-Clinton showdown, and we asked Canadians who did a good job or who did better at getting attention or attacking their opponents in the U.S. presidential race, and Trump basically did a better job or perceived it as doing a better job than Clinton. You can see on getting attention, 44% thought Trump did the best job compared to Clinton at 5%, and 42% thought Trump did a good job at getting attention compared to Clinton at 6%. So I think we could say that Twitter made Trump, period, full stop, because it was a platform. He was able to mobilize, engage voters. I think it's a little early in the process. I think Canadians accept, whether they like Twitter or not, they accept that Twitter is part of our democracy currently. And I think that depending on what direction Elon Musk takes things, if he ends up cleaning up Twitter so that it is a real platform for interchange, that would be quite positively reviewed by many Canadians. However, if it becomes a Wild West where anything goes, and the quality of the platform or the dialogue on the platform diminishes, there could be a bit of a repulsion to the platform, and it could be sliding even more, because we do know from our research is that, although many Canadians are on Twitter, it's not necessarily a credible source, because people take a lot of things that are on Twitter with a big grain of salt. So big hill for Elon Musk to climb. Not saying he can't do it. The guy's been discounted a number of times. They made fun of him for Tesla. They made fun of him for SpaceX. So I don't think he should be dismissed in terms of his impact on Twitter.
Oh, well, let's leave it there. Great episode. Thanks very much, Nick.
Take it easy.